We've got some bold predictions for the 2024 Mariners, but before we get into those, Bryan Woo is hurt, and John Stanton just had to embarrass Mariners fans one last time before opening day. We'll talk all about it coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, March 26, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the promo code LockedOnMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. We've got some bold predictions coming your way a little later on in the show. We're also going to talk about John Stanton's interview with our colleagues over at King 5. Got some thoughts on that. But let's start with Bryan Woo, who will begin the season on the injured list with right elbow inflammation. Mariners GM Justin Hollander said that it's similar to the inflammation Woo suffered last year that kept him out for around 3 weeks. So hopefully it's nothing too long term and they're just being extra cautious since it's early on in the year. But this now means Emerson Hancock will enter Seattle's rotation as its number 5 to start the year. And Colby, one of your biggest concerns heading into the season has already been realized.
Yeah, Emerson Hancock pitching for the Seattle Mariners. Yeesh. That is something that keeps me up at night because that dude is not a major league quality starting pitcher right now. Let me rephrase that. Emerson Hancock is not a MLB quality pitcher at any role right now. No fastball value whatsoever. Can't get to the changeup because the fastball literally has no value. So there's nothing to play off of. Slider is flat and just kind of tumbling, just kind of like spinning. It doesn't really do anything. It's a 40 grade pitch. And it's not like he has 65, 70 command to make up for it or help any of those mediocre pitches play up. So he's basically a one pitch guy. And you tell me a pitcher who has survived throwing only a changeup for his entire career. And I won't give you long because that guy doesn't exist, particularly not one who doesn't have, 65, 70 command. So even Jamie Moyer had the cutter to go off of the changeup. So, and also 65 command. So yeah, Hancock, not a major league quality pitcher. Is there a chance he became one over the winter? Sure, not that we would know because the Mariners refuse to pitch him when they're playing on TV, or more accurately, the Mariners refuse to put any of their players on TV, despite owning the freaking network in which the games are aired and having literally their entire camera crew down there to film the games anyways. But hey, I guess there are some things we just don't understand, us simple folk who don't have $1 billion to throw around on a toy. So I guess nothing we could do about that, but Emerson Hancock, not a major league quality pitcher. He's 92 to 93. We heard he was 97, and we got that for like 2 innings in his first outing. But since then, 92, 93, 94, occasionally 95. And the velocity helps a little, but it doesn't make the fastball a good pitch. It's still straight. It doesn't have much run. It doesn't have a high spin rate. There's nothing special about that pitch, nothing that is major league quality about that pitch. That is a 40 grade fastball to go with a 40 grade slider, 55 grade changeup, and then like 45 command, 50 control. That's not a major league pitcher. He is not a viable starter. He is 2022 Marco Gonzalez. He'll battle. But at the end of the day, if he goes 5 innings and gives up 4 runs or less, you kind of have to thank your lucky stars and hope that your offense has a good day that day because that's what you're going to get from Hancock. Because even if he is 96, 97, the slider still is non-existent. And for some reason, he refuses to throw that changeup as much as he should. So this is a stuff issue. This is a command control issue. This is a pitch selection issue. Hancock is not a major league quality starter. Is it all his fault? No, he's had a couple of shoulder issues since he's been drafted, and we know how, devastating those can be. And he's trying to pitch through it, and he's trying to kind of learn who he is. But what he is right now is not major league quality, and it's not like he's 22 years old. It's not like he's got a ton of time to figure it out. So basically, all you can hope for Emerson Hancock right now is that he doesn't implode, that he isn't just an automatic loss once every 5 days. Because he's just not a major league quality pitcher right now. He's not. Yet last year I said his ceiling was Kyle Gibson, and you guys got really mad at me. I'd be thrilled if he was Chris Flexen for one start this year. He's not a major league quality starting pitcher. He's not a major league quality pitcher. Could that change? Sure. Do we have any evidence that it has? Nope, not a one. Unless you want to just whatever Scott Services says, you're going to believe it. Then maybe he has, but I haven't heard any reports that said he has. I haven't seen him pitch, so I don't know that he has. And again, aside from the velocity bump at the beginning of the camp, which sounds like is all but gone, we have no evidence there's a new pitch. There's no new delivery. There's no change whatsoever. And what he was last year was not good enough to compete at the major league level for more than 2 or 3 starts before the league will figure him out. So hopefully you only need him for 2 or 3 starts.
You seem a bit peeved today, Colby.
Gee, I wonder why.
We'll talk about why in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there is no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Conference tournaments are here, which means the biggest moments in college basketball are getting closer. Be a part of the action on Prize Picks for both men's and women's college basketball. And tonight in the pros, I'm taking Jonathan Kuminga less than 17.5 points against the Heat, and Malik Beasley more than 10.5 points against the Lakers. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That is promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And just a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, so Mariners chairman John Stanton finally addressed the Mariners offseason in an interview with our colleagues over at King 5 yesterday. And a couple quotes provided by Mariner Muse have made the rounds, and I have some thoughts on them. So we're going to start with this very long-winded one, so bear with me. Stanton said, quote, "I think the fans understandably reacted to some decisions that we made early in the offseason. To be clear, the decisions are Jerry and Justin's decisions. I approve them in most cases, but our baseball guys make those decisions. The decisions we made was we had some players who had contracts for the 24 season that weren't going to be able to contribute to the team on the field. I think Robbie Ray walks on water. Weird. I'm a huge fan of Evan White. I think those are great people, and I'd love to have them associated with the team. But Robbie had Tommy John surgery, and the only thing I know for sure about Tommy John surgery is that the recovery takes longer than you think it's going to. We knew that Tommy John was probably going to keep Robbie out at least through July, maybe August. And so we're now in a position where we've got, frankly, $23 million associated with a guy who isn't going to be able to contribute 4 to 6 months of the season. Evan, similarly. So we made a decision to take players off of the roster and have the payroll, in effect, replaced by guys like Garver and Polanco. And we're going to have, with a higher, call it the same payroll, it's a slightly higher payroll, as I said, but with a similar payroll, okay, we're going to have more productivity, and all of the analytics that both we and the third parties do would suggest that we're a better team in 24 than 23. Doesn't mention Eugenio Suarez or Jared Kelenic, by the way.
The ones that people actually care about.
So we didn't hear from this guy all offseason. But now, after months of Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander having to answer question after question and take on criticism meant for him, he's suddenly no longer allergic to a microphone. It's funny how that works, huh? And what does he do? He does exactly what he's done for years now and throws both of them under the bus. He just said it out loud this time. So, like, let's get this straight. The owner of your favorite baseball team, Jerry and Justin's boss, who sets the payroll and writes the checks, thinks you're stupid enough to believe that he had no part in how this offseason went. Now, to be fair, he's not the only member of the ownership group. He's not the only one with a major stake in the organization. He's not the only person who dictates these things, but he is the face of the ownership group and he speaks for them. I want to bring up this other quote here. Quote, "I don't view the criticism of me as being particularly tough. That's not my concern. I want the team to succeed. I want the Mariners to win on the field. I want the fans to enjoy the experience of coming to games." There it is, right? He just said it out loud. He doesn't care how upset you are. He doesn't take your criticism seriously. And once again, he takes zero responsibility for how this
Not his
offseason
fault.
went. Right.
He's a
It's Jerry
victim,
and Justin's
guys.
fault.
He's actually a victim. Did you know
Right.
that? John Stanton is a victim. He's like you. He just wants, the Mariners to win so badly that he's not going to raise payroll, even though he promised he would 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year. Nope.
Mhm.
But actually, technically, I did raise it. It is up slightly. Good enough, right?
Stanton is very lucky this front office was able to maneuver this offseason the way it did. But I'm going to tell you something. If it doesn't work, there's going to be hell to pay with this fan base. And more Mariners fans are now realizing who the real culprit is. It's not Jerry, not Justin. They may say some questionable stuff into a microphone, from time to time when trying to cover for their boss, but they're not the obstacle standing between Mariners fans and real winning baseball. That's John Stanton and the rest of that ownership group. And if things go sideways again this season, things aren't going to go the way they have in the past. There won't be as many fans directing their ire at Jerry and Justin. And it's very possible that Jerry and Scott Service are on the last years of their contracts. So they don't need to put up with this anymore if they don't want to after this season. They don't need to be Stanton's plot armor any longer if they don't want to. So shame on John Stanton for trying to sell this nonsense to us. Shame on him for not even offering us a modicum of respect. And John, stop insulting the people that have somehow, some way, maintain some level of respectability for your organization in spite of you before you run them out of town. Because frankly, I don't trust you to find a better president of baseball operations. This has always been my issue with the anti-Jerry crowd, right? It's not that I'm just so pro Jerry that I don't think anyone in the world is better at their job than Jerry Dipoto, right? It's I don't trust John Stanton to find a better president of baseball operations. I don't trust him to find a better GM. I don't trust him to find a better manager. I don't trust him to find people who will build a better baseball operations group than this. And that's not to say there aren't better options out there. But I have zero faith in his ability to identify who those people are and, more importantly, sell them on his organization, because he certainly hasn't sold it to the rest of us. Right? So stop playing with fire. And for God's sake, stop embarrassing all of us.
He is not an ally. He's an enemy towards the goals of the Seattle Mariners and their fans, which is to win a World Series. He is the roadblock. He is the one standing in the way. Can they work around him? Maybe. Maybe. It's a really good front office. It's a really good baseball development team. It's a really good team. Really good players, really good coaching. Like, everything else is there. But there's a huge rock in the middle of the road. Can they go around him? Guess we're about to find out. But, John Stanton has the personality of a rock in the middle of the road, and he thinks you're as dumb as one if he's trying to sell this BS to you 3 days before opening day.
Yeah. Jerry Dipoto, Justin Hollander, and the rest of this front office deserve better. Scott Service and the rest of that coaching staff deserve better. Julio, JP, Cal, The rest of the players deserve better. Colby and I deserve better. And you, listening right now, you deserve better than this.
Mm-hmm.
This is embarrassing. We are 2 days away from opening day. We could be talking about so many other things right now, so many other positive things going on with this team. And yet, we're talking about this because it's unavoidable. We had to spend this entire offseason having to talk about the actions of this man and the rest of that ownership group because there was no way that we could talk about roster building or anything of the like without the context of his cheapness. This entire offseason has been dominated by stuff that really doesn't pertain to baseball, doesn't pertain to the things on the field. I mean, it pertains to the players that they put on the field, but it's a bunch of fluff at the end of the day. It's a bunch of BS that, frankly, I don't want to have to care about. I don't want to have to care about, RSNs and all that stuff. I don't want to have to look up TV deals and contracts and all that crap. Like, I don't care. I shouldn't have to care. You shouldn't have to care. Colby shouldn't have to care. None of us should have to care about any of this nonsense. But we do because of this guy, because of that ownership group who don't even have the respect for us to just tell us the truth. Look, if you're going to be cheap, if you don't want to spend a ton of money, just be honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just be honest about it.
Right. We want to win, but not at the expense of profits.
Just be honest about it. Don't throw
Cool.
Jerry and Justin under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make it seem like it was their decision.
Yeah. Oh, they had more money. They just didn't want to spend it. Like, they liked the team they built, so they didn't think they needed an extra $25 million for Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery or Cody Bellinger or whatever. Nah. Like, it was available to them. They just they wanted to challenge themselves. Like, that's not happening. And you're a fool if you believe it. And John Stanton is basically trying to tell you that's the case. And he thinks you're a fool. Yeah. So
the only thing that I
not save you.
The only thing that I got out of that quote, or out of these quotes that Mariner Muse posted yesterday, was John Stanton, even though that he didn't say it, he said it. I think you're all idiots. Screw you. You'll buy it no matter what.
Mm-hmm. The only way the Mariners are getting into the national spotlight these days is when John Stanton decides that he needs to embarrass his front office and his team and his fans even more than he already has.
Unreal. It is unreal how bad they are at this.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you consider how good everything else is.
Hmm?
Everybody else is at their job. If John Stanton was as good at his job as Jerry Dipoto was at his, we'd be talking about how many World Series can we win in the next 5 years, not, do you think we can sneak back into the playoffs again this year? It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Again,
So,
John Stanton is the enemy.
So, John, get away from the microphone. Go back up to your office. Go back to the board. Learn some gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And for God's sakes, next year, next winter, or even starting now and heading into the deadline, let your front office cook because they're actually good at this.
Yep.
We're 2 days away from opening day, folks. Like, the Mariners are actually playing real baseball games in 2 days. I don't know if you know that. We're going to get back to our opening day prep with some bold predictions in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKDON, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So this episode was supposed to be strictly bold predictions, but because of the Woo stuff and the Stanton stuff, we kind of had to switch gears. But we are going to do a few bold predictions here over the next 10 or so minutes. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to start kind of light. I'm going to go Mitch Garver plays at least 120 games this year, which is pretty bold considering he's only played, I think, a career high of 103. But I think they are going to be able to keep him healthy. They aren't going to catch him that much. He's going to strictly DH, and they're basically going to be able to keep him bubble wrapped that way.
Sure. So first, the caveat of bold predictions is these aren't necessarily things that we think are going to happen. It's more
No.
just you know, there's a difference between predictions, which we're doing tomorrow,
Yeah.
across the league. Those are actual
This
we
is
think
just
this will
throwing stuff
happen.
at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, come back
Yeah.
in 6 months and be like, yeah, look how smart I was when I said Julio was going to
Right.
hit 60 homers, and he did. I
Right.
was the only one to say it.
Right.
So yeah, so these are more fun than they are actual predictions, but obviously, there's some realism baked into them, but they're not
Sure.
we're
Like,
not
we're not going to be
predicting.
like, the Mariners are going to throw 5 perfect games this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, no, but it's also not a bold prediction to be like Julio is going to lead the Mariners in home runs this year.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we know. So anyway, so you said Garver's going to play 120 games.
Yep.
Okay. I guess I'll just roll with. I don't know how bold this is. It's pretty bold. I think it's pretty bold
Okay. All right.
because it requires quite a few things to happen. But you know what? No. I will mild this down. I'll
Okay.
douse some milk on this to
Oh, come
you know
on. You're scared to compete.
kind of either Josh Rojas or Luis Urias will hit 20 home runs this year.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Do you want to predict one or the other?
I would predict Rojas, but I don't
Okay.
know if either of them are going to get enough at bats, which is why it's
Sure.
still kind of bold because
All right.
home runs are an accumulation number, obviously.
So this one's going to be not a great one.
Oh
This
boy.
is kind of a deflating one.
Why,
Well,
Ty?
well, well, it's
The
going to be
first
kind of
20 minutes of this wasn't deflating
it's,
enough.
it's going to be a roller coaster. It's going to be a roller coaster. Julio has a 7-win season and still doesn't win MVP
Oh, I don't care about that. As long as it's a
because
7-1 season.
East Coast bias.
Mhm.
Someone on the Yankees is like Soto or Judge is going to have like a pretty good year and still win it.
Adley's going to have a 5.5 win season and be like, he's a catcher. So he
Right.
has to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. That's fair. Bold prediction.
Mhm.
The Mariners throw 2 no-hitters this
Mm.
year.
Mm.
Yes.
By who?
One against the Kansas City Royals of all teams.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh.
No.
Ooh. Specific
I will
teams.
sure. I will say Logan and George.
Okay. I like it. This one is me being petty and wanting to see Mariners Twitter lose epically. Every major Mariners departure will finish with less F4 than the players they were replaced by.
All right. All right.
And I would even consider, I know I said major, but major league, right? Like I would
Sure.
even consider like Sebi Zavala over Tom Murphy to be included in this.
I mean, is Tom going to play enough?
We'll see.
It's kind of part of it, right?
Is Sebi gonna play enough?
I mean, if he plays 60 games and he's at 0, that might be better than Tom Murphy because
But yeah,
Murphy
so
might
that
play 2.
includes like the third base situation is a little weird because it's like 2 guys essentially replacing one.
Yeah. You kind of have to
But
combine
yes,
Rojas and Urias there.
yeah. But so that includes Gino. That includes, I don't know, what would we say? Rayleigh over Kelnick or Canzone over Kelnick?
I would take Marlowe over Kelnick, which is bold prediction number 3 from me. Cade
That's not
Marlowe
a
has a
prediction.
higher F4 this year than Jared Kelnick.
Okay,
Um,
yeah,
yeah. I'd say probably Rayleigh just because Canzone was on the team last year.
sure. All right,
Canzone's kind of replacing Teoscar a little bit.
yeah, kind of. So is
Yeah,
Mitch
him
and
and
a
him
little
and
bit.
Haniger. Yeah,
Yeah. All right.
which brings me to
What's your
bold
next one?
prediction. Mitch Haniger gets 500 plate appearances this year. That's my
Ooh.
spiciest
All right.
one.
All right.
The one with the
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
likelihood of happening.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is a kind of a bold prediction, but I think I've already stated as such. Seattle Mariners, 6 All-Stars in Texas this summer.
Nice. 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 I
Mhm.
like it. I like it.
Julio, Cal, the 3 pitchers, and could go JP, could go a reliever. Um, I'll go JP. I feel like his profile was raised enough last year that if he does something similar again, he'll have a little more
Mm.
momentum behind him. And really, people do need to remember that JP was good in the first half. The power really surged in August and September. That's when he kind of took off and became this guy we hadn't seen before.
All right, so I got one more. And
Okay.
this one, don't ask me how, don't ask me why, but at a certain point this season, probably towards the trade deadline, the Mariners are going to acquire a Fan Fiction Friday legend, Bryan Reynolds.
Wow. Okay. See, it's interesting because I was going to say that the Mariners will acquire or they will make another Luis Castillo trade, but this
Mm,
time it'll be for the bat version of Luis.
mm, like it,
So
like it.
that could
Do
be
you have them?
Reynolds.
Do you have a name in mind?
No, because it's kind of like right. It's a year and a half. Like it's not 4 or 5 years like it would be with Reynolds. It's not a rental either. So like Robert is out because he's got 3 years left, 3.5 years left.
Mm,
So I don't really have anybody in mind off the top of my head. But yeah, I think it's going to be Luis Castillo player, just basically like a 4-win hitter. Uh, and honestly, I think they should try and make a Jesse Winker type of deal every single
mm,
winter. Like I think that's how they acquire
yeah,
the bats that they want.
mm,
But obviously, sometimes you don't have the ammo to do it, and sometimes there's just not that guy available to you. So, will there be a guy available to them this summer? I don't
mm,
know. It's a lot harder to be a buyer now than it ever has been, but
yep.
I think they found a way to do it because I think they're looking at what they have. It'd be nice if it was a third baseman. That would be like perfect. Um, does that exist? Now, I guess you could argue, is Jorge Polanco a Luis Castillo like trade? Like Castillo's probably a little better than Polanco, but Polanco, when he's healthy, he's 3.5, 4-win player.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Didn't
yeah,
cost that kind of capital that Luis
sure.
cost you.
Sure. Maybe it's a Randy Arozarena,
Yeah,
2.5
yep.
years this time, but we know the Mariners like to circle back, and their interest in Arozarena this winter has been kind of speculative and kind of
Mm,
up and down. Like, no, they actually really do like him, and we've heard no, they actually really never considered him. Blah blah blah. So, yeah, I don't know who it is because it's going to take a prospect mostly package, and there's only a few teams that are going to be sellers, and those teams that we pretty sure are going to be sellers, they don't have this bat, so it's probably going to take a team that's kind of a surprise or like a disappointment
mm,
to kind of fall out of this. But yeah, I think they'll make a Luis Castillo like trade for a bat though this summer.
love it.
Um, headlined by
Mhm.
Tyler Locklear
Okay.
and Harry Ford
Mm.
with Dylan Moore as a sweetener
Oh,
because he's
you
being replaced by Ryan Bliss.
you've already turned
Uh,
on that on your
oh,
Demo
never.
stand-em.
When I find a Demo jersey that doesn't cost $250, it will
Mhm.
be in the background at some
Alright.
point. So,
Alright, love it.
but yeah, I mean that's all I got. Demo's going to be in the deal to kind of help with some money and because they're going to go to Bliss or Samad Taylor to kind of fill that role. But yeah, it'll be Ford, Locklear,
Mm,
let's say Teddy McGraw and Dylan Moore.
sure, sure.
Sure, why not?
That's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, once again, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.